Welcome to Association Chat, your online discussion where we warm ourselves by the virtual fire with topics of the day, welcoming thought leaders and trailblazers alike to join up in this online home for the community. I'm the host of Association Chat, KiKi L'Italien, and before we get too settled, I'd encourage you to take a second and hit subscribe, figure out how you're commenting today, because I want you to leave a little comment or some sort of sign that you're interacting, you're engaged, and you're here. It's not just me that likes this. It's also the algorithm gods that are out there paying attention on all of these channels. So if you don't mind doing that, it would help us to get a little sign that you're getting value out of the show. And with that, we can move right along because we have a really great topic today. For this episode, I'm sitting down with Dan Streeter. He's the visionary founder and CEO of Mission Fuel. He's also an acclaimed e-learning innovator and strategist. And our focus today is talking about unlocking the untapped potential that your association's content has to drive growth, to drive innovation, and to have lasting impact as we head into 2024. Because guess what? We're heading there. Whether you're ready or not, we're going to be going. So whether you're a seasoned veteran in the association industry, or if you're just starting out, this episode promises to equip you with actionable strategies to turn your existing content into revenue, I can say it, revenue generating courses, and so much more. So we're going to be talking about this. We're going to be talking about strategies. You can ask questions and find out more. But before I get too crazy, let me go ahead and invite Dan right up here. Hello. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me, KiKi. It's great to see you.
Oh, it's great to see you too. So a lot of people, and I imagine we'll get into being able to talk about this a little bit more as we go along. A lot of people may not know this, but Dan and I have been working together quite a bit lately, especially since ASAE Annual, to develop some really exciting things. We'll talk about those as we go along. Some materials, some courses, an ebook, and some things that you may have seen me share on different channels for Association Chat. And Dan and I, actually, we've also worked together in sort of a previous lifetime too. And so I want to talk a little bit about Dan. And Dan, I want to talk about your history and a little bit about you, your background, how you found your way into this work that you're doing now with all of this e-learning and all of this exciting stuff.
Such a great question. So thank you very much for having me on the show and for all the kudos. I really appreciate that a great deal. It's been such a great adventure being able to work with you over the years. And so thank you for that, for the opportunity to continue that work together. And so my name is Dan Streeter. I am the CEO of Mission Fuel. And I had started my career as a teacher way back in the 90s, pre-internet days. And then I've been an entrepreneur a couple of different times. I've been a school principal, and in one company that I created focused on instructional design for associations and for nonprofit groups. That company did well, was acquired by a group called Blue Sky eLearning, that if you're in the association space, you likely know because of their product, Path LMS. And so I served as their vice president of learning development for a number of years. And then I saw something come out back in November of last year, which was ChatGPT. And I saw that this tool was going to revolutionize the way that we were doing e-learning. And Blue Sky is an amazing place to work and to be a part of. And they were very supportive in the desire for me to be able to go out there and to be able to tackle this new tool. And so Mission Fuel really is designed to be able to help in terms of the building of the strategy when it comes to e-learning, helping to be able to build the business model, of course, building the content, helping to deploy that content, and then, of course, do the marketing and sales around it as well. And so that's what Mission Fuel is about. We primarily work with associations or really mission-driven organizations that want to be able to essentially sell content online. And so we're able to now, because of AI, drive down the cost of production such that now we can go ahead and we can actually do revenue share modeling, which we could never have done in the past. So it's sort of a neat trek that we've been on, and a really exciting times to be a part of learning and development for sure.
I mean, it really is. And I got so excited in talking with you at ASA Annual. We sat down and I got to hear a little bit more about the incredible work that you're doing in this new company that you've started. And this concept of turning existing content into revenue generating opportunity for associations is definitely compelling. It's definitely something that a lot of people would be interested in, I would think. Can you talk to me a little bit, provide maybe an overview of what that could look like for an association?
Well, and a lot of times it depends on, of course, the content that you have, and that you want to be able to see, or the ways to be able to repurpose it. But even taking a step back further from that is really about determining what's the business model. What
Mm,
exactly is our audience need? What's the mission of the organization? What's the content that we have? And when we begin to pair all of those things up together, what happens is that the picture becomes really clear about exactly how are we going to use this content in a way that's going to benefit the organization in the best way possible. Because, for example, we can do a webinar and then we can figure out a way to be able to chop that webinar up to be able to then promote things like association chat, or things like the courses around ethics that we've got, the ethics in ChatGPT, or we figure out a way to be able to use the content that we have to then build a course from. There's a whole host of ways to be able to do it, but we want to make sure that we're creating the right content that supports the business model that we actually want to be able to achieve. And so, in my mind, everything begins with the business model and the strategy rather than beginning with the content.
yeah, I mean, I think that that's probably one of the most interesting things that, um, in our discussion kind of comes out of that is that instead of just forcing someone through a process of, okay, it's a transactional sort of thing, there is a real strategy there, and trying to understand how does this content, how do we take an organization's content and figure out whether it makes sense to monetize it, whether it makes sense to create something from it, if that is meeting what their strategic goals are and helping them to achieve their mission, and even just understanding better about some of the value that's connected there. Because I think a lot of organizations, a lot of associations may not even understand what kind of value they have in the content that they already have, you
Yeah,
know?
right.
So, for example, I mean, we had for years and years associations recording just every subject matter expert, every course, every lesson, every session, all of these different, lots and lots of conference material. And I know that it's sitting out there for many associations, just sitting there, those files, those videos, and nothing's happening with it. And through talking with you, I know that you've seen a lot of the same and have figured out, ways to make it relatively, I don't want to say painless, but to make it less painful. I don't know, to like go through it. I don't
Yeah.
know. Is that fair?
It is fair. I think that that's where we talk about like the repurposing of content. Is that
Yeah.
let's imagine that we had a conference material and that we had permission to go ahead and to reuse that material in a variety of different ways. So,
Mhm.
so let's imagine we went ahead and we recorded the conference piece. We got permission from the subject matter expert to reuse it. Then we would then shrink that down, remove, for example, the Q&A, and or we script out the entire piece. We use something like a rev.com, where we basically get the entire transcript of the video, and then we're going to go ahead and use that in something like ChatGPT. And we essentially say, out of this transcript that we have, we want to be able to now reshape this to be an e-learning. And so then we would go ahead and either we can do that in something like an Articulate Rise, like basically a
Mhm.
text-driven course, or we can do it in something like an interactive e-learning, like in Storyline 360. Or then we can use something like a straight voice over PowerPoint. We can use segments of the individual or of the recording, placed in there. You get the idea that there is literally a million ways to be able to go about the repurposing of that content. Number one thing is make sure that you get permission, because of course we never want to be able to steal anybody's intellectual property. That's not the goal here. The goal is to be able to go out there and of course get permission, and then figure out the best way to be able to use that content that's going to promote membership in a way that really makes sense, and of course promotes that speaker as well. And so there's a wonderful synergy, because they want to be in front of your audience, whether it's to promote their business or to promote their academic career or however. Those subject matter experts want the opportunity to be in front of your audience. And so, as you're talking with them about the best way to be able to repurpose that content, that's something certainly to keep in mind, is what's in it for me is the presenter to be able to go out there and to supply you this content that then you can go out there and reuse.
So, and I want to dig into that a little bit, because rather than, I think for many people, it might be pretty straightforward to understand that, okay, there's content and maybe we can repackage it and offer it as education. But some of the examples, some of the ideas that you've had about ways that it can be repackaged, and even the models, the business models for like how people can look at this as revenue generating product, is interesting. And I think maybe a little bit different than how some association executives might be used to thinking about it. And so could you talk to us a little bit about some of those approaches?
Absolutely. So when we talk about business strategy, there's a whole host of ways to be able to go about it. We really try to focus in on about 8 of those strategies and figure out what's going to be the best way to be able to monetize the curriculum or the content that we have. And the place to begin is typically with a sponsorship model. And so normally what happens, of course, is you have your LMS that's out there. You want folks to be able to come to that, and you're going to attract eyeballs to that. Well, there are people who will pay to be able to have access to those eyeballs. And so you want to be able to figure out who in your industry is going to be willing to be able to provide a sponsorship to effectively pay for things like content development, or be able to pay for things like the learning management system itself. And so that's going to be one item to do, is essentially come up with a sponsorship model. It could be a good, better, best model. I can put a logo on the screen on the homepage, right? That's it. I can go ahead and I can take part in something like a demo days, where I get the opportunity to basically sponsor a 30-minute segment for me. Or I go out there and I sponsor a course that has a long lifetime, or I sponsor an exhibitor space on the learning management system. I mean, you get the idea that sponsorship dollars are one of the most important yet undiscovered items of many associations. We get sponsors all the time for conferences, but we rarely go out there and try to be able to pursue it for our learning management system. So that would be an example of a business model that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the content, just has to do with the learning management system. And there is numerous ways to be able to use the learning management system as a revenue driver, especially if you understand the nuances of the tool. I'll just give you one more of those, and then we can talk about the next part, which would be the actual content side. So for example, in the context of Path LMS is a prime example. They have this amazing feature called Teams. Teams basically allows for you to be able to have a series of microsites underneath of your association site. So there are clients that go out there and they basically take advantage of those microsites. They now pay basically rent. They have renters who come in and essentially say, like, universities or companies who want access to the content that the association provides, but also want access to the ability to be able to upload their own content and essentially have their own little microsite. Well, you charge them a few $100s every month, and then the next thing you know, you have a very nice, profitable business model with very little effort. And so the point being is that there are certain technologies or pieces of the learning management system that can help to be able to basically provide revenue with no change to the content. So that would be the first part, is figure out how can you use the learning management system to drive revenue. The second part is really around the content development. And so when it comes to the content development, parts of it is figuring out how best can you do things like sponsorship, or how best can you bring in a consultant who wants access to your members. And so the consultant provides a webinar, then provides a small group class, then provides one-on-one consulting, and you basically take a component or a small share of that revenue, because it's all driven through the learning management system or through your AMS. And those are ways to be able to use the content piece, the sponsorship piece, that can really drive revenue over the long haul of things.
Yeah, I mean, I love talking about this with you because I can see examples, different examples that would work for all kinds of organizations, people that I've worked with over like in the past, and also people I'm working with right now. And I think that the hang up that I have run into with a lot of association executives is this idea that it has to be so tedious and time consuming and difficult. And if anybody has been into course development and stuff in the past, been one of those subject matter experts that has been brought in to like put a course together, certainly in the past, that could be true. That could be something where it was just, oh my gosh, this is going to be very time consuming and take a while to put together. Even if we kind of liked it, it was something that was more of an endeavor.
Yeah.
But what I'm seeing now is because of our beautiful technology that we have available to us now,
Yeah.
and because of this process that you've put into place, it's just really made it so much easier. And so, can you talk to us a little bit about how technological advances have helped us to get a little bit speedier in the way that we can put these things together?
Yeah, such a great question. So in the past, if you wanted to build a Storyline 360 course, where basically
Mhm.
about interactive e-learning, where it's voiceover driven and so on. Remember that you had to involve a whole lot of people in order to make that happen. And you're looking at also, it's somewhere between 120 to 200 hours of time that it would take to be able to develop that course. So
Yeah.
if you multiply that out, and it's $100 an hour to be able to do, and that's cheap, by the way, at $100 an hour for everybody from the voiceover artist to a translator to whoever that you might need, scriptwriter, instructional designer, and so on. So all those folks need that, right? So at $100 an hour, you're basically looking at $12,000 to be able to develop 1 hour of content, all the way up to maybe 20,000. It could be 25,000. I've heard as high as $70,000 to be able to design 1 hour of e-learning. That's
Wow.
incredible. That's just
That is.
incredible, right? And impossible for a small association to ever afford. But now, because of something like AI, what happens is that we have the ability now to move the subject matter expert from the content creator to the content verifier. And that is really where the big shift has occurred. So we can go in and have very little knowledge about a topic, whether we're talking about how to teach kindergarten all the way to nuclear fission, and literally every single thing in between. We can type that in and say, give me the learning domains that match, and bam, it will do that. Then I want to have individual learning objectives. It will do that. It will figure out what is the right way to be able to build the scope and sequence for beginning, advanced, middle level courses. Then you add in the audience. You get the idea that once you start down this path of content creation, you can figure out the process that goes along with it. It is a game changer, because now something that used to take 120 to 200 hours of time, now all of a sudden could be shrunk down to 20 hours of time, 30 hours of time. So now, if we're able to shrink that process up, and really, the vast majority of the time is really spent in programming something like Storyline 360, which eventually will be done with AI. As we do that, the cost of production is such that now we have the ability to come in and say, oh gosh, it's so cheap to be able to do this now. Let's figure out a way to be able to do a revenue share around this. So then as revenue comes in, we have the ability to build more and more and more content. No longer do we have to build just one-off programs. Because now once we create a program, we now have enough revenue to now build the next program and the next and the next. And that's the advantage of being able to use tools like artificial intelligence, is because we can take a process that, that now it's at least half, sometimes a quarter, and even an eighth of the time that it would take to be able to do even a year ago.
I mean, it's absolutely amazing, but I can imagine I'm like channeling the association executives out there that are saying, how do I even know if the content that we have, like what it's worth, or like if it's worth investing in? We have so much, some of it's probably good. I don't know how much. So like for those associations that could be out there sitting on a gold mine of content, how do they go about even figuring out what the value is for the resources that they have?
Great question. So the first thing to do is to simply take an inventory. You got to figure out what you have. And then the second part of that is to be able to do what we call a scope and sequence. Basically figuring out what are those learning domains that we've got, what's going to be the learning objectives that match, who are the audiences that really match that bit of content. What we're doing there is we're figuring out what are the high value pieces of content that we've got. And it doesn't necessarily always have to do with education, like education per se. It can also be about promotional tools as well. Because remember, that is an association, we do lots of different things. We advocate and we educate, certainly, but we also attract, retain, and of course, re-attract members, right? That churn. And so because of that, what we want to figure out is which content do we have that actually allows for us to be able to do those other three things too. And how can we attract them? So if we've got a promotional video, gosh, now we want to figure out who needs that. Well, everybody needs that. So it's a high value piece of content that we've got. And if we don't have one of those, well, how can we create it? Well, we can use a tool like InVideo that now can produce that promotional video for us quickly, like in a couple of hours. You can have a 2, 3, 4 minute promotional video. Now, granted, is it stock video? Yeah, it is. But could you use your own material and include it in there? Yes, you could. So if that's the case, gosh, you have the ability to be able to have your members in there. You have the ability to be able to basically create an easy script that you can edit. The point being that it's not just simply about the education side of things. Content, every bit of content that you create is education, but you got to determine what's the goal. Because if the goal is about attracting members, well, that has a different value than if the goal is to be able to get people to pay for courses, which you can certainly do, or you figure out a way to be able to build a subscription model around, or you figure out a way to be able to bundle. I mean, you get the idea that it really comes back to the business model and figuring out what actually is it that we're in the business of doing. And then we figure out the best way to be able to create the content that matches. Now, as you do, then you're going to figure out the real value of what you've got. Remember, the value in terms of dollars comes down to what are people willing to pay for it. And you can create a course that costs $200,000 to produce, but if there's value in it, then nobody's going to pay for it. And then you're concerned about return on investment and so on.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because I think that, when it comes to what are people going to invest in, and what is that right price point? I think that, that's also something that's kind of a challenge. And I certainly hear people like, I'm thinking of like Bruce Rosenthal and Michael Tatanetti and different people like that in the industry who talk a lot about pricing and sponsorship, and trying to figure out what those models are, the best models that are out there for establishing what that is. But, another topic that comes up a lot is community for associations. And I know that in the past, there's also been a little bit of a challenge between how to connect education or the content that you're creating, in this case, like courses and things like that, and community. And I think that there's a really great opportunity here for associations to figure out how to cultivate that kind of community around something that adds value, like education. But I didn't know, like, have you seen this in action? Have you watched organizations doing this?
Absolutely. So education can absolutely drive the networking and drive the ability to build community. Let's simply take that consultancy model that we talked about a little bit earlier. If we use that and we created a cohort model from it, where basically we designed a program that is led by a subject matter expert that we verify, they come in and they lead this group of 12. Well, then now you bring them into the conference and they're all wearing the t-shirts, right? And they're the ninja, or they're the expert, they're whatever that is, that they're walking around, and people ask, hey, what's that about? And then the next thing you know, now you've got your next group of 12 that are going to be coming through. In terms of the ability to build community, most of the time you can do that in the context of online learning through things like networking. So let's imagine that we do a webinar like what we're doing right now. And then after the webinar, we give access to the subject matter expert as a small group, and then also on one-on-one. What that allows for the opportunity is to be able to build community around a given topic. And now me, as the association, I'm able to identify who are the people that are the most likely to be able to buy the next component of the consulting service, for example. So what we want to figure out in terms of the networking piece is give folks the opportunity to be able to get together, discuss, and it isn't just about the lecture. It's about then providing the opportunity to be able to do breakout rooms. You give them a problem to solve. They go out there for 5 minutes. They get a chance to talk about it. Then they come back, and then they have the opportunity to be able to share out that material. Those are the things that really work, is that we want to make sure that we're giving folks from a diverse backgrounds the opportunity to be able to discuss as much as possible. And when you do, you will be surprised at the results. Folks want the opportunity to be able to get together and have conversations. And the e-learning space is a perfect place to be able to allow that to happen.
Well, I actually wanted to kind of take our conversation into this direction of, and if anybody's watching this rather than listening to this later, if you're watching this right now or watching it later, you'll see that there's KiKi's Learning Academy there at the bottom. And that's no accident, because actually that is what Dan and I worked on together since ASA Annual, putting these courses together that are now available through my own Learning Academy, which is very, very exciting. And because things like ChatGPT and looking at generative AI and the ethics around it and things like that, people have so many questions. And we were just talking about it. And in my role as a digital strategist, I was like, okay, this is something that people are asking me a lot of questions about, that I'm talking a lot about. Does it make sense to do something like create a course on it? And Dan, you led me on the path, like, and talk about walking the talk. You like actually showed me all the steps along the way on how easy it is to put this together. And, really helped me step by step to figure out how to offer this and provide it, and to just put these things in very quickly, so that we were able to get this up and like a month. I mean, it was really, and this is while we had a million other things going on.
Yes.
So, which I really, really appreciate. But to that end, I do want people to check it out. I've been today and then over the next couple of weeks, doing short little webinars and talking about some of the topics that are included in the Learning Academy, to give people an idea about some of the things that are discussed in here. But with the idea of, let's go through this learning together. And so it's been really, really exciting to see these courses are available. People can purchase them now if they want to and go through on their own, and that's totally fine. Or they can go through, as I roll them out in the weeks to come, through these cohorts where we're going to go through together and explore some of these topics. But I just wanted to take this opportunity not only to sort of pitch my Learning Academy, but also to say, like, this is the work that we've been doing and the work that you are doing for organizations. So if you want to get in there and play around with it and see some of this stuff, this might be a really good way for you to do that. And also reach out to Dan and, and talk to him too.
So you bring up a super important point, though, Kiki. Is it really is about what's the business model, right? Remember,
Right.
as we started talking about the reason why we would create something like Kiki's Learning Academy, and
Yeah.
it really because we wanted to create a community around technology, specifically in the association space. And you've done such a beautiful job of that. This is just one more avenue to be
Yeah.
able to generate interest, to be able to attract folks to you and to the space, and also allow for the opportunity for your business to be able to grow in a way that's missional, right? That really is about your mission, which is informing and educating and helping associations grow in terms of their technology.
Yeah.
And this is just one more tool to be able to make that happen. And as you do those cohorts, then what's going to happen is that you're going to attract a few, then you're going to attract a few more, and then the next thing you know, you're going to have a whole bunch of people out there that are now a part of the Kiki brand of the Kiki community that weren't there before. And
Oh,
so,
heaven help us.
and that's what makes it great, and that's what makes e-learning so great. Is you can
Yeah.
post courses all day long, but the truth is that what really drives folks is that community that they really want to be a part of.
Yeah. Well, and I love that. So the way that we're working together is I do have, like, we have the association chat community, and I am also a consultant. So it's really important, I think, for people out there to hear that, while Dan works with associations, there's also, I mean, any content leader and any subject matter expert who has like this platform. If you have a platform that's out there where it makes sense to create something, certainly like a large body of content, if you have a large body of content where you're looking at it and you're thinking, oh my God, I have 14 years of content, right? And so I was looking at it and thinking, where do we even begin? And so that can be a really helpful process for you to go through. Anyone who has a large body of content where you're saying, how can I help people get value out of this? How can I make this make sense? Repackage it so that it really is connecting for folks. And also, by the way, furthering my goals and my own strategy for what I'm trying to do in my life.
Exactly
Yeah.
right. And especially if you do have a body of content, you do have an audience, then education then begins to make sense to be able to build around, which is the position that you're in. You have a wonderful audience, lots of people who really like the content that you produce. It totally makes sense to be able to then move into the education space. And because of tools like ChatGPT making it faster and faster to be able to do, now, from a monetary standpoint, it also makes sense to be able to do that you couldn't have done, even just a year ago. And so, a lot of people that are in the space, at the education space, will say, well, if it's easy, it's probably not good. And that is not the case. In
No.
fact, in many respects, the education content, when done in the right way, really provides a great deal more context, provides a great deal more depth of understanding than if we just simply did one subject matter expert as a standalone. That is a wonderful tool that allows for us to be able to basically create a conglomerate of education in the context of the courses that we create, representing a variety of different perspectives that maybe we hadn't considered before,
Yeah.
based on our experience. So ChatGPT and AI in general can really help to be able to create more quality courses rather than less in many respects.
Oh, I love it. And I mean, we even, went through the exercise of when you're going through and using ChatGPT to sort of test and see, what am I missing? What are the holes? And that was something that where are the gaps in what we're providing? And that's something that I think people miss, that there's a lot of focus right now on making sure that you don't just copy and paste and directly take from and all of that sort of thing. But I don't think there's as much of a focus on such a great value behind, like, where are there gaps in my thinking? What's missing from this section? What else could I provide to provide more value? Which is a way to interact with something like, Chat GPT, where you can add a lot of value there.
Right. And on the flip side of that, a lot of times we think, well, if we're missing it, then we have to add it.
Oh, right, right.
Right. And so the truth is we don't. The truth is that we still as humans have the ability to be able to decide what should we include and what shouldn't we. And there
Mhm.
always is the point of overwhelm where we're like, oh gosh, now we've got 24 hours worth of content that we've produced. No one will ever get through that. And
I
so
know.
instead, we want to be able to figure out what is the most important thing that matches our audience, that matches our mission, that matches um, our business model. That's the thing that we should be creating, because when we do, that's what's going to create the success that we're after. Because once we identify what actually is the end goal, what's actually the reason why we're creating this material, then we can backwards plan and be able to figure out the best way to be able to make that happen. And that's what's been so neat about the process that we work together. It's because we
Mm.
started there. We talked about, like, what actually is the business model? What life do you want to lead? And then how do we figure out the best way to be able to get to that point?
Yeah. Well, so with somebody like you have your finger on the pulse of e-learning and it just in and even instructional design. And so what do you see as trends for learning for associations moving forward? Clearly, things like Chat GPT can have a great impact and speed things along, make things faster. What else are you seeing?
What I'm seeing is for learning management systems, as an example, is the
Mhm.
ability to be able to create content inside of the learning management system. So
Mhm.
that is one big piece that I think that will come out. Associations tend to be a little bit behind the curve when it comes to technology and adopting new technology and so on. I think that will be a disruptor that will occur for instructional design teams that are out there trying to be able to figure out how do we use this new technology to then go ahead and build the content ourselves rather than having the subject matter expert do it, and then go ahead and have the SME be the verifier. Because of course, then that allows them to be able to go out there and do the thing that they're great at. We're great at building content. Well, let us build the content, and then let's figure out then the way to be able to then make sure that the subject matter expert verifies it. So I think that's going to be one way, is basically the building of content inside of the learning management system. But that's fraught with issues, right? Because now all of a sudden I'm committed to that LMS, and if it's in there, how do I get it out? And so that's
Mhm.
going to be another piece to be able to take a look at, is okay, now that I build it, now what's going to be the next part that's going to come out? As we go, you're seeing tools that basically have the ability to build video, that have the ability to build voiceover, that build the script, that have the ability to do graphic design. There's going to be someone who's going to pull all of those elements together. And when that happens, that will be a major disruptor in terms of the instructional design world. Now what we're seeing is that, for example, when we create a piece of e-learning, then we used to have a translator. Well, now that's done through things like then we used to have voiceover, and now that's done. And then
Right.
we used to have the script writer, and then we used to have it, and so on. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh gosh, what happens to those jobs? I think the other part to know is that those jobs will transform into other jobs. And that's part of the reason why I felt so compelled to be able to start Mission Fuel, is because it was really about how do we now transition those L&D folks to be able to teach them how to be able to do this next thing. Because it will be a major disruption that is coming down the
Yeah.
pipe. And we know that, and we can see it, that in the next 3 to 5 years that's going to happen. So what we want to figure out is how do we help the folks be able to make that transition, because there will be a disruption that occurs there. And certainly we know that if you don't go down the AI route, or at least understand how to use it, what it's capable of and what it's not capable of, then it puts you at a disadvantage coming up here in the near future. Because it will change the game, just like being able to use Google 20 years ago. Now we need to be able to figure out how to be able to use this next tool.
It's so true, and I think that I mean, anyone who thinks that, they can just buy a tool and that's the thing I'm going to say is, like, look, we have amazing technology, really, truly amazing, really does look like magic, but anyone who thinks that you can just buy a tool and get the outcome or the product that you want, maybe you can, but it is still going to take a long time to learn how to use that tool properly and to get to the outcome that you want. Watching you in action, Dan, I mean, it's just like, there are lots of paintbrushes out there, but when you put the paintbrush in like, my hand versus Michelangelo versus like, it's like watching you in action and putting content together and figuring out how all of that works. It absolutely reminds one of the fact that there is still a place for people who have all of this knowledge and training. And it's truly an augmenting of, let's take this technology and augment what our skilled practitioners and people who have expertise in these areas can do, because in the right hands, that saves you time. It makes it so much more efficient. You're able to do more for less. I mean, there's so many reasons why it's a good thing. But I have to say, for anybody that's listening or watching right now, truly, Dan, I mean, there's no way I could have done what you were doing that quickly and watching it come together. I mean, it truly, like, just to be fair, I just want to put that out there.
Well, that's very kind of you to know, to say, but I think that the thing to remember is that there's still a place for instructional design. And
Yes.
you've got to have those folks who handle things like translation, and translation will look different. Voiceover will look different. Those jobs will just simply evolve over the course of time. And so just like with instructional designers, we think about the world in a different way. I had a friend who once described instructional design to me as basically making straight lines out of spaghetti soup. And that's what instructional designers do. They look at all of these massive ideas and they figure out like, oh, we're just gonna be able to do this and this and this. And instructional designers think in a different way that simply ChatGPT can't, at least not yet. Now, and over the course of time, those skills will need to evolve. And the job will not go away. It will just simply look different. And that's going to be our job, to be able to figure out, like, rather than going to the library and using the little index card, right? Then we move to Google. Well, now we're going to move to the next thing. And we're going to go from Google over to this new model. And we need to make sure that we're prepared to be able to see what that new model looks like. And certainly it's frustrating to be on the outside sometimes looking in and say, like, all of these, this massive evolution is going to happen. Well, yes. But that doesn't mean that the entire economy is going to collapse because of that. We will evolve, and as workers and so on. And I think that's where I think that one of the biggest things of, just like the ChatGPT book around evolution of ethics when it comes to chat. How do we use chat in a way that really is ethical and it really allows for us to be able to share knowledge, and yet at the same time really protect our knowledge and really make sure that we're not scraping the boundary of things like plagiarism or things like using somebody's face inappropriately, or there could be a potential violation of copyright in those pieces that we wouldn't want to do.
Well, so with that, if somebody is listening to this and you were to say, okay, here's your one piece of actionable advice that these next steps you can take to take your content and make it, leverage your content for growth, what would that be?
Great question. So the first part is keep the end in mind. Figure out what actually is it that you want. I think that would be the first piece, and be very clear on what actually is the end goal. Is it to drive revenue, or is it to do something else, right? Is it to attract membership or whatever? And everybody says, well, it's all those things. Yes, but there has to be one primary thing that would be the driver. So that would be number one. Number two is then figure out what you've got. What materials do you have that matches? Then we figure out what exactly is the audience that we have. Okay, who should get what material? What is ultimately the learning objective that we want? Do we want a certificate program? Do we want a certification program? What actually is it that we want to be able to create? Once you've got that basic strategic plan, then figuring out the business model that matches becomes so easy to do. Look at it from the perspective of good, better, best business model. What's going to be the good? What's going to be the better? What's going to be the best? And then from there, then we begin to consider how to be able to deliver or develop the content. So you can see there's a whole lot of steps that are going to go into that prior. So if there was one thing that I would do is, first off, build a plan, a strategic plan. That'd be the first thing. And I'm going to put in a little extra on the side over here, which is this. There's a lot of fear that go around things like the AI model. were me. And I was in a position where I hadn't really investigated it yet. I hadn't gone out there and tried it. Try it. Just simply try the tools. See what's available out there that potentially matches. Take an hour on a Saturday. Just simply sit down, hop into ChatGPT. Try to be able to see what's possible. Because now the tool is evolving so incredibly quickly. It is remarkable now that you can upload a document to it, that you can go ahead and it can see, it has the ability to basically, if you have something that's broken, you can actually have an image of it and it will help you how to fix it. It's like it can see, it can hear, it can talk, all in the course of the last 6 months. And that's just, that's literally the tip of the iceberg. So the world is rapidly evolving. ChatGPT was the most highly adopted tool in the world, the fastest, most highly adapted tool ever in the history of mankind. There's a reason for that. And so as it continues to evolve, we will need to as well. So I guess it's two pieces of advice. Start with a strategic plan. And then secondly, go out there and experiment. Try it. See what happens. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to learn something. So go out there and try it out. See what happens. And if anything, reach out to me. We can try it together. And I can show you a little about how it works.
I love it. I mean, and what a great way to end our discussion today. I want to thank you so much for everything, Dan, but also thank you for joining me today and for talking about this topic. Associations, use your content to grow in 2024, and Dan can help you. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here, KiKi. It's been a pleasure working with you, and as we continue on our journey. So thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for joining me today for this wonderful conversation with Dan Streeter of Mission Fuel. I hope that you will go check it out. Reach out to Dan. He's such a spectacular human. Reach out to him, ask him questions. He will help you out. I know he will answer you and get you on the right path if you need to get onto some sort of path that has to do with your learning and with your content. With that, I hope that you will continue to ask questions and to learn every day. Because why? Because as Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Have a great rest of the week, everyone.